Kirk Whalum has been blending jazz and R&B with gospel music and traditional hymns for over 25 years. With over 26 albums, Kirk has garnered 12 Grammy nominations. In 2011, he won the prestigious award. With his newest album, The Gospel According to Jazz, Chapter 4, he plays beloved hymns like Just As I Am and Ave Maria.
Kirk Whalum, thank you so much for being on Turning Point.
Yes, ma'am. It's my honor.
Well, we are at The Gospel According to Jazz, Chapter 4.
Yes.
So what inspired this particular project?
I love that question. So the first thing that happened was a big disappointment. I was dropped from the label I was on, Columbia Records, in 1996. And it was sort of unceremoniously dropped, right? It's like, oh no, you're dropped. And so it was, as Christians, we try to say, oh no, no big deal. God has got a plan. It's like, no, I was devastated, right? And so my wife, she knew that had to hurt. And so she caught me before I got in my pity party. And she said, okay. It's almost like the okay was like, pay attention. Mm-hmm. And she said, what can you do today that you couldn't do yesterday when you were a Columbia recording artist? And it hit me like a ton of bricks. It's like, wow, wait a minute. I've got to think positive about what just happened to me. And sure enough, the idea that immediately came to my mind when she said that was to do a series of recordings where we as secular artists, mainstream artists, do something that people go, oh wow, I didn't know they love God, or this person here is on a journey trying to find God, and unabashed about expressing that, whether it's George Duke or Patrice Rushen or Jonathan Butler at that time. People are like, oh really, he's a Christian? So to me, that series came out of a big, devastating, event in my life, and it turned into something that now we're at Chapter 4, we got a Grammy. And let me hasten to say that we started writing this chapter with George Duke in mind. And I talked to him, I said, man, are you in again? He said, man, I'll be there. He's like, I'm dealing with some physical issues. He said, but man, I'll be there, just give me some time. And sure enough, he went on to be with the Lord. So this is the first chapter, Chapter 4, The Gospel According to Jazz, without George,
Yeah. You talk about in the DVD, George Duke, Wayman Tisdale, and Nelson Mandela, how these guys had such an impact on you and inspired some of the songs on your new project. How did these men impact you?
Yeah, so, I'll say that when we do art, or in this case, the sonic arts, music, we, can't really sequester ourselves off from things that are happening in the world. And so people say, well, Christian music should worship and glorify God. Absolutely. But do we do that in a vacuum? Did Jesus live in a vacuum? No, Jesus was very much concerned about the things that were going on and how it impacted people's lives. Individual people, how it impacted their lives.
People often refer to you as an ambassador because you worked with Luther, you worked with Whitney Houston, and some people may question, well, why work in a secular environment? However, what is it that you've been able to bring to the secular market that maybe another secular person wasn't able to bring?
Sure. Well, first of all, I bring a vulnerability. Okay. I think it's sometimes arrogant to think that I go out into the secular marketplace and I'm bringing the answers. I know that Jesus is the answer and Jesus is in me, right? I know that the glorious mystery, the glorious riches of this mystery of Christ in me, the hope of glory, absolutely. And so I'm praying that God would use me in some way in the mainstream marketplace. And again, I don't use the word secular. But at the same time, I find that, when I'm in that place and around people who are not walking with God, I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly learning about, what it was that God, Jesus, really worked up, to like, man, these people are hurting. So I want to be there to listen. I want to be there to share the love of Christ in scenarios where God is not always welcome. But hope and peace and answers and a listening ear are always welcome. We are called to be salt and light, not in the salt shaker, right?
I didn't know you sang. I watched you sing, and I'm like, oh, okay, what don't you do?
Well, a lot, but I'm grateful. My family, they're singers and musicians and preachers, and so I'm all of that to some degree. The singing, really, I resisted that for a long time because it is, you're self-conscious. Like I can hide behind that saxophone, right? But more and more, I'm loving to sing, and I've taken it seriously. I'm actually studying with one of Take Six. Dave Thomas has been sweet to kind of give me, vocal lessons and teach me how to use my voice, and just that's one thing. A lot of times Christian musicians tend to eschew formal training. Especially gospel musicians. Oh no, I don't need to learn how to read, or I don't.
The anointing gonna come on me.
Yeah, I'm like, that is such that's such a false perception. It's just going to add to what you do. Your ministry before Jesus is in the practice room. That's where your ministry is, okay? If by chance God allows you to be out on a stage somewhere or up at church, that's a privilege. And that's like the joy of, but your ministry, your work before God, study to show yourself approved, is in a practice room. I just am so grateful, however long God allows me to be out there. Of course, I love playing in church. I love playing for Christians. I'm grateful to fellowship with folks who love Jesus, man. There's nothing like it.